Okay, let's have some fun. That's fine. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. Now we're ready. But, so as pointed out in the little announcement, so that's kind of the battle plan for the next sessions, in case you haven't seen an email yet. Now we see. Yeah. So agendas for today and next week in general. This is a weird layout. So we'd like to talk about your planned sketches. Again, like we did this before, all your creativity works. Hand-driven pencil, parchment paper, or whatever method you use. I saw parchment paper earlier here. Want to give you the opportunity to actually say, okay, this was my vision for this site, this was my justification, why did you choose, let's say, a hotel over retail versus a residential use. Yeah. Then we have a few elements from the textbook and the concept of the lectures. I want to wrap up with a more open discussion. Housing alone, if we enter social injustice, social housing, housing Supreme Court cases, we can do hours and hours and days and days and days and days of discussion. Yeah? I want to keep this in a rather abstract discussion, so we have a chance to take a look at the philosophy of infrastructure and utilities, because the moment we put them into the ground, we don't care anymore, we forget. Yeah? I have a little bit material, a little bit of video as well on urban renewal, because we should talk about that as well at some point, because reusing lands is getting more and more interesting. Yeah? And then I would like to do some wrap up on the teams, as in where you're at, last minute changes, last minute adjustments, double thumbs up that you're ready to go. As in, you got this whole thing figured out. Huh? Next week, we're going to have Bob Shapiro from Mass Development, and he will present one of his in-process products, Dana Point. And he actually is really excited about this. He is prepping almost like a workshop-style session where he gives you step-by-step iterations on this process. Issues of land acquisition, changes of existing parcels and how they make the deal, dealing with the local government involved, dealing with the state government involved. To give you a ballpark, the first iteration was about 1 million square foot space. Then we went up to 3 million. But FDOT and the other government agencies are cutting them down, so they're doing like 2.5. One of the elements here is traffic impact. As you're creating so much traffic, the system capacity is not there, so you cannot build out like this unless we are changing the system. This is a perfect example for this class, because we had a discussion about systems of flow, system peak capacity, and all these little more metaphorical discussions we had. He brings it to the ground as almost $1 billion investment. Huh? multi-year development, multiple years in decision making. And depending on the timeline, he wasn't sure yet completely on Friday, but it is probably the case that he will share official information. Once it goes public, he can share it with us in the classroom about one of the really coolest deals made on that site. Yeah? I was like, I know about it, like non-disclosure agreement pretty much mentally. Yeah? He and I talked about a 90-minute, 2-hour framework. The way it is built up right now, I'm thinking more in 2 hours solid. Yeah? I also know that this is the last official session before final presentations and the teams. Yeah? In the past, it has been very beneficial for students to have mock-up presentations. Yeah? As in, not just presenting in front of your peers, as in, let's meet up in a room. No, and present also, let's say, with some authority in the room, so you get a different adrenaline shock, you know, a little bit of anxiety. Yes? I mean, it's in a supportive way. Yeah? So I was thinking, let's do mock-ups. Let's put you on the spot with multiple levels. A, you need to start working on this presentation. So you can't finish it the night before. Yeah? And then don't practice and show up here. So you have to have outline and some structure, early flow. And I wrote this down as in, if some slides aren't done yet, put a placeholder in. What I mean with this, don't worry about the cover page with a picture. Yeah? If the financial tables are not done yet, put a placeholder on and have your index card ready and say, I'm going to talk for the next 2.5 minutes about my financials here, which would be an extreme placeholder for 2.5 minutes. Yeah? But what I mean with this as well is, if there's some graphics or some gadgets you want to implement, it's not done yet, it's not done yet. Let's make an example. You come up with a 3D rendering. Yeah? You've been talking about it, but you're not done yet. You don't have the perfect angle yet. Yeah? We'll put a placeholder in and it says, we'll show 3D rendering. And I'm like, all right, ready to see this soon. Yeah? The idea is to give you the 15 minutes of presentation time to run you guys through. Hopefully not the first time in the team, but maybe the second or third time. To run you through, to see what's going on with the flow, how you bounce ideas and sections off and on. Yeah? Then I give you, as I mentioned this here in honest language, receive brutal honest feedback. I do this team by team. I don't do this in the classroom with all of the students in here. Huh? So what we're going to do is we kick out 16 or 15 people and keep 5 or 4 in. Huh? Run the video, so I even can cut it, share the individual video with you guys to see how awesome or how miserable you are with your body language. Yeah? As in, look at here, yeah? Versus, can you see this? Different opportunities. I've done this multiple times. It's a huge learning experience for me as an instructor, how to be brutally honest. Positive reinforcement is the big buzzword here. But I also do this in a way as in, if it's crap, I will tell you it's crap. Yeah? If it's great, I will give you thumbs up, it's great. Don't mess around, don't mix things. Yeah? Done this in development 2 multiple times, done this here a few times. Had external judges come in that couldn't make the official judgment day. They came in here, mock-ups. We had Kona Gray and Jessica once here. And we did this. Yeah. And next week is your live presentation. The graded one. If mock-ups are destined to fail. Say it like this. A perfect mock-up still can, because it has different anxiety and anxiousness going on and nervousness. A mock-up is a really good trial run. And that's the reason why I want to offer that as class time. Yeah? To really make sure that this is a learning experience for you guys. For some of you, it's not the first presentation. For some of you, it's the very first presentation in that kind of context with a team you just met 4 to 6 weeks ago. Yeah? If you haven't had frictions going on with your performances in the team, finding the common language. Yeah? Everyone has individual performance levels for presentations. Yeah? So you might want to check out what's going on with that. Yeah? And this is a test moment, because it's different if you as a team would say, you guys are my audience, and I present for you for 15 minutes. They will say, yeah, it's fine. I might just raise my hand and say no. No? Again, be as potentially ready with this thing. There's some hiccups, some bumps, some placeholders. Yeah? Again, if you go fancy stuff. But the general concept is, want to have a good flow in the visuals and want to have a perfect flow with the team. If not, I make comments about it. I positively reinforce you guys if you're doing great stuff too. I just don't want to sound like I'm the needy professor who's always nasty with his comments. No? As an example, we did this airport project years ago, $500 million extension. We had a team with perfect ideas, with very strange characteristic traits, as in how we present in a team. And the mock-up, they completely bombed. I literally told them, if you don't get your stuff together, let's meet in nice language, I will refuse to have you represent this university and this program in front of the official clients in the room. As in, nice try, we're going to have someone else present and cut you as a team. Yeah? So that's one of the reasons why mock-ups are important. So we really work that team bonding experience and that combined messaging in one element. Yeah? Versus, I like this, I really like this, I really like this, you guys are good. Wide span. Yeah? The assistant dean tells other faculty, I put the fear of God into my students when it comes to presentations. I don't know if I take this as a compliment, but it sounds good as a compliment. I want to make sure that you have that learning experience. On that note, I found these by popping up. Yes, that's about the original size when I took that picture. This is a bad PowerPoint slide. I keep saying no black background, white font, 12 font size. Remember? Don't do it. Huh? Well, there's this one too. Don't do it. There's you learned enough about site planning and alignment of space that you don't do this on this side. Or like this. Yes, this is not a black background, but blue. Yeah? Fun fact, Corona was here last week, presented stuff. What was his favorite background color? Black. Black. But with letters like this. Yeah? Difference in visual delivery. Okay? So, I'm thinking in terms of setup, 15 minutes and some feedback. If you're faster than that in the mock-ups, it's fine. It means you maybe have to slow down with your presentation and certain things and play with the voice and the pace of your voice. Or you're really fast. Again, this is a training exercise to prepare you for the real deal. The real deal. We are going to do this on the 12th. Yes.
Does everybody have to speak during the presentation?
Yes,
or one
it's a team presentation.
Can one person represent the team though?
It's a team presentation. All right, to give you an idea. Ideal team setup of 5 team members, right? One position is, let's say, the marketing director. He or she could start the show and actually present the team. Yeah? Ideally, I would think that someone introduces each other, or everyone introduces by themselves. As in, hello, my name is Thomas, my role in this project was, or is. Yeah? If he is the site planner, I doubt that he will present the financials. Yeah? So, think about this. There's also a little bit of a presentation guide in the handbook, as in student opening, talk about the general project idea. I think it's important that you actually present up front, like an executive summary. This is what we're going to do. For the next 10-15 minutes, this is what we are going to tell you the story about. Don't wait until the last minute that you tell them, oh, we're doing 18.5%. Yeah? Be blunt and say, opener, build up, good closer. Yeah? Like a 3-4 minute video trailer, not like a 30-second ad. Build this up. Yeah? There are different experience levels in the teams, from undergraduate work or regular work. So there are different design levels. I don't care about how fancy this is. I look at the flow within the team. I would like to have team members somewhat equally represented. As in, yes, I know that some folks of you might be a little bit more shy in public speaking. Public as in 15 people in front of you. Yeah? If you don't learn it here and you don't practice here, you will not be able to do that in a public hearing. Because then you don't know the people. Here right now, I have a little bit an idea who's who. At least I know everyone with first name. Yeah? So we had in prior classes, awesome student, hardworking, very petite, very shy, and not really happy about her foreign accent. Pushed her through that. She was angry with me a few times, but she is really good in presentations now. So this is a learning experience. Again, 15 minutes. I'm not counting if you're really 10 seconds or 90 seconds on the clock presenting for your team. But if the impression is that you just said, hey, this is my team, and you step out and have the 4 other guys doing it, your participation is not there. I don't grade you on your personal presentation. I grade the total sum of presenters in the team. Yeah? Personal preference is a peer review component. Yeah? So every one of you guys will get a form on Canvas, or like a quiz you can type in. Andrew. Andrew? Person I will criticize. Andrew. Andrew's role in my team was financial analyst. And then write a nice paragraph, like a professional review, like you would do if you would be in a supervisor position for an annual year review. Andrew did a great job. No, Andrew was this, Andrew did this, Andrew's responsibilities have been fulfilled on time, blah, 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 blah. Really nice. You know, there are different ways to express them. Then you will get asked a few questions, more likely, no likely, and at the end, what kind of points would you give that student in terms of grade rating? As in 0 to 100. Going with the credit level grading system where everything below 70 is a failing or not passing grade. But if the person didn't do well, you still can give 50 versus 0. It's different. Yeah? This is also not judgment day. I want that as a constructive criticism and feedback, positive and negative. Yeah? Because I get from a 5-people team, I get 4 comments about you and your personal judgment. And it's interesting to see if the team gives you like your 90 points, if it's an A-, versus you thinking you're the superstar plus. Yeah? Vice versa. Team gives you 100, 100, 100, and you are humble and say, yeah, I'm just did the 88, B+. I've seen it all. The justification, that little text, gives me enough substance to make a judgment call that this is a proper, fair assessment of teammates among each other. Yeah? And with that judgment call, I take that and put it in your grade. Yeah? Because I have no idea how much trouble you guys had fighting over pizza or even time scheduling in the last 6 weeks when you started doing this project. I don't know how many times each team exactly met outside. I know some have been very active, but your teammates, that peer review gives me the insights on what happened with your team and how your team works. And this is again, like Kona presented, check your ego at the door, you're one team. I keep saying this line from the movie Drumline, one band, one sound. Yeah? And you can see this in the presentations already. You can see this in the write-ups already. Speaking of write-up, so change the deadline for the write-up. Give you 48 hours more. Yeah? The report is due on that one Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. We pushed that into Thursday, 8 o'clock. Yeah? Because I did invite a few alumni, there's one sentence about them. They're successful entrepreneurs and brokers in the real estate business. Yeah?
Who's that?
Verbally confirmed Ben Vitala, Steve Gouache, Noah Leon, and Danilo Badeo. You know, she worked for Danilo. Yeah? So different broker levels, different real estate and general contractors. There are different class setups in the urban plan gaming game. They all went through this exercise like you did. Huh? Fun fact, when I asked Steve, hey, would you be, I don't want to ask you really because you have done so much work in classrooms, but what do you think, urban plan, Lego blocks? And he's like, here. Last time he came in here, he actually graded or suggested a grade for his now business partner because they have been a year apart or semesters apart. Yeah? And I can tell you one thing, we're going to pick on him. Noah completely tanked with his visualization. That's a fun fact. Really successful in other things. But it's a good thing that he hired a graphics person. All right. So, final setup is, I give you again the 15 minutes time. If you go a little bit over in the mock-up, I will tell you. At the final presentations, at 15 minutes, you get signals before, at 15 minutes, cut. Don't care where you're at. It's like the tape is running out, batteries are out, lights out. Yeah? I don't care who is speaking right now if the one slide is missing. Shut down. Huh? Then we have about 10 minutes-ish Q&A from the judges. And the reason why I'm doing judges here is I invited them to assist with feedback. They're not necessarily giving you a final grade. Sim 1. I'm going to be the person that says this presentation is that high or that level in arrangements with the guys. Yeah? But I hope that the idea to have externals that know the subject matter come in here puts you up a little bit more on stage instead of, yeah, this is a class presentation, I don't care, I just have salmon shirts on, salmon colored khakis on or something like this, and a t-shirt. Yeah? Versus completely in a suit. I don't expect you guys to be in a complete suit. But don't show up in jeans and don't show up in shorts and a rash guard. Sorry. I just thought about mine because I had the stuff in the office. So, a little bit in a professional context, even if this is in-class setup. No? End of that email said about deadlines, we changed one to give you more writing time because you get the mock-up, then you have a little bit time to add a little bit more substance to the mock, from the presentation maybe into your text. As in, this is important, if you did not cover that yet in your text, you need to put this in your write-up. It always comes. Or don't put too much time in the presentation, change this in the write-up. Presentations, reports are due on Thursday night, so I can send it out to the guys. We're doing Saturday afternoon, 12:30 setup. So if you use a Lego model in front, you have enough time to put it up. We're doing informal introductions. I don't think 12:45 is going to be the first team. I have no idea right now about the order. I just thought I'd randomize So we don't have any trouble who goes first, who goes last. A little bit Excel, randomized number, run it. And that's about it. In terms of time frame, will take about 25, 30 minutes per team, so you can figure 4 teams. It's going to be 2.5 hour session. Short, precise, with huge learning experiences. Then you have about another day time to do your peer review. Meaning, go home, eat, sleep, have drinks with your friends, take care of family you abandoned for the last 8 weeks. And then Saturday evening or Friday, Saturday morning, sit down and write your little resume or reviews. A hint, if you write it in a Word document, type it and then copy and paste it per person, it's easier and more convenient. The peer review is a huge learning experience about yourself as well, because you literally have to think, how did the person do in my team in contrast also to me? A huge character element. Have you ever had to write a self-review about yourself? That's the first time maybe, if you haven't done that so far. All right, any questions about how we are going to run the show in the next 2 sessions? 3. Okay. Who's this? Alright, let's dim the light a little bit. Let's see. Again, this is, I'm not sure if I have all of them. Picked the first few, did download, no idea who's who. The idea is that you have a moment to speak about it. Again, this is a photography or scanned version. The original is more detailed, more colorful. But the important part was in that exercise that you take a look in what's on the site, what's in the neighborhood, and if you are looking at certain functions, again, linkages, function, distance access, and layout. If I decide I want to put hotel on there, what else is as hotel available? If I decide I want to do an auto parts shop, what else would be available or needed in the area or already present? Yeah. So again, function, then distance and access that goes into the layout. It's all yours.
All right. So first I thought about doing a hotel because it was next to the highway, but then one teacher told us it was a hotel, so I changed my mind. I don't want to compete with them. Here, then I thought about industrial, but it was too close to residential. And the residential was too close to the highway. So I was left with office and retail. I went for retail because we were very close to this mall. And I thought like, since we are so close, it would be like a nice thing between us. People going to the mall might want to stop right here. And then it was, I didn't know really what kind of retails I wanted to develop. So I looked at the S3 report, and they said there was a need for electronic furnishing, home furnishing. So this was my main clue to store like this. And I like it because, I mean, both go to home. You might want to buy something like a chair, a desk, and maybe a computer, so it goes well. It goes well with the residential because that's where the demand is. And it was going very well with the mall because they do not offer this kind of stores in that mall. I checked the list and there was nothing there.
And this roundabout, is this connecting the existing road or is that?
Okay, this roundabout is for this entrance. And if you want to get out.
Okay.
Because I don't want this to cross, it's too much traffic here.
Okay. Good.
All right. And the last one, not the last one, I put the medical store in the corner because I wanted people on the road to see it if they were going to the medical complex. And at the end, I put the gas station in because I had space. And
Yeah, but there's also one here.
Hmm?
There's also a gas station up here. Existing use
I didn't
in
see
this
it.
area. Yeah,
I didn't see it. And the last thing I did is I separate the public space with the retail space. Like that when they deliver, they can deliver through here. turn around or go there and I'm down space.
All right, cool. Next one. Who's that? I actually know who's that.
That was a nice design too.
Who's that?
It looks really good on a high definition screen. I'm looking forward to see that in the original. The last time she did work like this, you can see it slightly here. All these areas are shaded, hatched, as in put the ruler, line, move the ruler, line, move the ruler, line. This is not filled, this is covered. Hi.
Hi. So my general concept for the site was to do a mixed-use proposal that included residential, retail, and a co-working space. After seeing that there's a lot of growth coming for the area and a lot of young people, I felt like it was a good program for the site. I allow for access to the site from the north and south side,
North is here.
or north, yeah.
Yeah.
So both ends. And since it's a school project, I decided
You
to
see this
go.
right? You allow access here.
Yeah.
That's interstate.
Um,
The red dot here is the interstate, and it's about a 40-foot drop into this interstate.
I'm building a bridge or something.
Oh yeah!
Nice.
Let me pull Google Maps after that in 3D. Okay.
And I decided to go a little more creative on my shapes, given that it's a conceptual school project. And
We can see the conceptual lights in here.
then Andrew knows this. When we work in architecture offices, you don't get to really, you plan things out like this, but it doesn't always become buildable. So
All right.
that's my project.
And that's the reason why you gave us those drops and leaf forms.
Yeah.
All right. I'm fine with the form. I'm just confused that you're going to do a straight 90-degree access to the height to like a multi-lane interstate. So that's interesting. All right. Good.
Underneath. Go underneath.
It's actually fun before you can see that, but if you look at the Google Maps, it's a huge drop. All right. Do that.
Oh, it's mine.
And I did turn them depending on how they fit the best on the PowerPoint slide. So that's the reason why we have like the left and right, top and right.
Yeah, so this is my presentation. So I was looking at the linkages with the residential over here, and I saw that there was a high demand for rental units. So I created a apartment units right here with a clubhouse and parking in between. Then, because there is a lot of tourism based off the ESRE report, I created a hotel here with green space where there's like a dog walk area. Also, for the residential apartments, have like a dog walking green space area as well. And then the highest demand for the retail was the car dealership. So I put a car dealership right here on the main corner because it was a main corner where the traffic is all going towards the highway. So I thought that was the prime corner for the retail. And I put parking around. And also in that report, there was a service need for auto dealer, auto parts. So I created a service center here as well. And then it said that 90% of the population in the 1 mile radius eats out either at dinner or takeout. So I figured these three would be more like quick service type restaurants, either with like a drive-through or like a Chipotle style where they can go in and out, and additional retail here that would lead right to the interstate.
All right, cool. I like the way he justifies his uses and the idea. This is a function I want to do, or could do, or I have alternative material provided, gave me the information about this specific function would be feasible, and then played with it on the grounds. Really nicely done. Who's that? Where's Cole? Oh, okay, let's skip that. What's simplistic? Probably big retailer and parking. Why not to talk about that? Interesting thing is here the connection to the off-ramp going north. That's the off ramp, and then if you would go back on the ramp, you actually go here, Edwards, and then up north. Oh, speaking of up north, car dealership, if you actually go up north into the so-called Mason area,
Yeah.
if you hear about tennis and beach volleyball in Cincinnati, that's actually in Mason, it's like 30, 40 minutes north of it. It's an area called King's Automall. It's all you can see are parking lots for sale. So that was interesting that you found that Audi car dealership
Yeah.
as part of that.
How
All
far
right,
away
with
is
that,
that?
Mine. All right, so glad not to be first today. So, let's start with the gas station. It's has a retail gap within the 5, 10, and 15 minute radius of the site. So I built a gas station with this road and this road having access to the highway.
audience is this way.
All right. So both roads have access to the highway, so that's the convenience of use for that gas station right there. There's also a need for a auto dealership as well as auto parts. So I put that in the corner over there with the 1-to-2 parking ratio for special use. And then there's also need for 60% of the 5, 10, 15 minute radius is also go to movie theaters. So that's retail mixed use for retail and hoping to put a movie theater in that portion. And they also like to eat out. So these retail down here, I'm projected to also put like places to eat as well. Again, single family. The segment for the immediate area is mostly a metro renter. So they go ahead and that'll benefit the increasing population to 2021. And since there's an increase of renters versus families in the area, so that will also be beneficial for rentals. And again, 50% of everybody in the 5, 10 mile, 15 mile radius also go to convenience stores, so that can be beneficial as well. And also they have medical up west and more retail to the south.
All right, nicely structured, like it. Again, this is tilted, this is not north-south right now.
That's
So.
fine. Well, I saw in the REE report that there was a need for health and personal care in the market, and so I thought, well, this is a medical building, and I saw in Google Maps that this is a hospital. So I thought this could work for like a medical theme site. So I made a connection. I'm proposing to build a hospital here that connects to this one and provides a new specialty. Because this hospital, from what I saw, has different specialties in different places. Not many, but
Yeah, if I recall right, this is like a medical office tower or something like this, not necessarily a whole new office
Yeah,
or
well,
hospital. But
they don't-
I like the idea of connecting what's out there existing, maybe with a new idea for the new stuff. Yeah.
So this hospital can have for people to stay after surgeries, and it could also focus on like preventive health, which is a trend. There's like a rehab facility and the building that connects, so that in the winter you don't have to be outside and you can go from one building to the other. And then there's a gym here and a wellness center that could also be related to the hospital, so that they could propose guidance for preventive health, for example. And then here there's a building with apartments for people who work here. They come to training, or professionals, doctors that can come to work there. And then here there's these two small businesses for storage of medical supplies, and some retail for medical related products. Then there's some groceries, retail, like a drugstore, some groceries for the people that are in the area, and this could work also for people outside the area. And so there's lots of houses around, so they could also profit from this and from the gym.
And then over here in purple, there's a hotel for people that come from abroad or profit from the municipalities here. And they could also, serve the medical area there. And so here they could use like vans and stuff and go outside, and also provide the medical building. And then this entrance here is also to make it closer to the medical area. So that's pretty much it.
So she had a few questions in between about, hey, parking space and the uses, etc. And I think this is a really nicely done example of the only limitations is a quasi per use. You have a certain ratio of parking lot. No limitations as in this has to be financially feasible. Or you have to put up 50,000 versus 100,000 square foot, or different 100,000 versus 50,000 square foot of retail to make this happen. Yeah? This is again, the intent was to have you guys think about a blank site with the environment surroundings and say what could work here, what could not, based on some preliminary market research. Yeah? And then next round, if this would be a development 2 project, you would take a look at this and say, hey, what's allowed on the site by regulatory analysis? What's feasible with my market and feasible with my financials? Would you actually develop that design then? You might find that the hotel itself needs to be actually larger, or you get rid of one core element here and make the numbers talk. Right now, this is the concept talking.
Well, in terms of that, I saw, I'm going to leave some green in here in the middle, just in case you need more parking later. But I thought, what if you build a garage like you have here? I thought, well, the density around looks like you don't have a lot of, I thought you have to do it like this and not on a building, because anyway, you can't have a lot of people in this land. So
we will see next week how many times they shifted building and building types around, where they said, okay, now we add another hotel, 2 hotels on the site. There are 2 or 3 hotels next to the site. Yeah? So how Bob Shapiro actually changed things around multiple iterations. He calls it the evolution of his plan. Yeah? So I like that. That's pretty much your first final version, the final draft you're presenting. I'm pretty sure some of you had multiple ideas here and there to deal with this. All right, good job. This one is different. I would like to hear that justification. And I haven't read the justifications yet, but
well, this has
this
to go with the conceptual approach. I noticed that there was a residential area over here, and I planned to fit my site into 2 different main areas, which are the retail area with more of a sports-oriented retail area for customers that want to just shop, and then the second main area of my site would be the training facility and the soccer academy. I built 2 full-size soccer fields over here and 1 mid-size for younger players, also because I couldn't fit. The parking structure is to the left, right in where the traffic comes in on this side, so that it's the main structure that they see first and they can access parking really quickly and conveniently. I was planning on doing it 3 floors, spawning all across here, and that should be enough to hold up the people that are coming to the retail soccer shops and the training academy.
so what's your plan if this is a soccer field? What's your plan having a soccer field next to an interstate? Any ideas about that?
Well, I thought you said it was like 40 foot tall, so I don't really think it was a problem, unless a car like flies out of the interstate or something.
You've been down on Turnpike, passing what's called the golf facility, Top Golf. They have this huge net because of the golf balls flying off.
Oh yeah, well they do that with
That could be
soccer fields all the time.
I mean, you said it's the soccer fields, the soccer club, football, FC Cincinnati had in the last 2 years a huge discussion about where's the next stadium or training site going. Because they used to play in the University of Cincinnati football stadium. And now with the soccer team being really that great, they actually have exactly that problem where to play this. I had ideas to go over to Kentucky, into the city of Covington to build there. So it was an interesting thought to see this again. I did not think about that we were doing a training facility for sports, but cool. Who's that? No, well structured, well thoughtful. Has to be a has to be a landscape architect or an architect. So the stereotyping. Look at the hedge work. Look at all the nicely done.
Okay. My proposal for this project site is a commercial center based on the location and the context of the project site. And here is interstate highways, and here that's the existing one. So I propose here around the interstate highway has on the job site is have the traffic road, and between this road and the interstate highway is linear park or green space to buffer the noise and things. And in the center of the project site is a roundabout and also the commercial center. And here to consider this, my understanding here is
Intersection there to add to
this
that.
commercial is another code.
Yeah, it's a medical unit, and then there's a commercial shopping center with the largest, Norwood Commons, the largest anchors used. Last time I was there in person was the Whole Foods and the, not H&M, but I think Victoria's Secret. Those are the largest anchors in that kind of courtyard design.
So for my project site, so I created the entrance here and have a roundabout in the center. And here is the residential single-family house or apartments to extend the neighborhood patterns.
I like that actually.
And
Extend it across the street, yeah.
office buildings is at this corner because
Oh,
yeah.
good. Looking forward to seeing the original. Alright, what was that? It's almost like, oh, different setup. Big box hotel.
So, I was told it was a sketch, I didn't add any color.
That's okay. You all also did that, I think, like 3 weeks ago or something like this. Wasn't that one of the examples?
Yeah, I don't have time in the week to do anything. So, I did add a little bit of everything. I put a hotel right here because I thought it would be nicer to have a hotel far away from the interstate because no one wants to be at a hotel on an interstate. And I also thought that what neighborhood is near an interstate? So I didn't add so much residential. I added more apartment buildings for lower income people. I added an office building right here and a big box store for the residents living in the area and a parking lot and more retail over here.
What do you have in mind as for a big box?
A big box, any Walmart? I don't know.
Would that be justified in that area?
I think so because there's a lot of residential and there's not one big box store. So I was like, no, put a big box store near an interstate would be pretty lucrative, in my opinion.
Alright.
And I put a lot of office space. These are office buildings, each one of them. And I put office space for the people working there. It could be really for anything, medical, really.
Like you think like office bungalows or something
Yeah,
like this?
smaller
Just
office
one
buildings,
large
3-story
building?
office buildings with 2,500 square foot offices. And I put low-rise apartment buildings here. And I put a hotel there because I thought it would be a good idea for the office buildings in case anyone from out of state would come, they can stay near the office building. And yeah, that's really it. Oh, and what else did I put there? Oh yeah, I put retail right here, a small little retail area for, just again, just to fill the space and not to have any empty space in the area, to really open up, really use as much space as I could. And I aligned the streets so that it would be easier for people from this area to just go in and enjoy the area.
Alright,
That was
good.
it. Thank you.
Who's that? Sorry, this is twisted.
So, at the top here, we have low-rise apartment buildings for the rising population that they're projecting. This one's apartment as well, that one over there. And there's restaurants here and here, and then a large retail shopping center.
All this is parking in the
Yep.
middle? Alright. What are these?
Those are restaurants little shops for the people in the apartments.
All right, any idea on how many apartments do you want to put up there?
Not really sure.
Doesn't have to be the exact unit count, but you're thinking 2, 3, or 4 floors of apartment building.
Probably just two, just low rise and low rise.
What would be the justification for that?
The increase in population that they're projecting over the next 5 years, and most of the people that live in the area are renters, so we're increasing renters.
The reason why I'm asking is, would it make sense to say these are single family homes around here with 2 floors and a roof? So you might want to consider the aspect of design ratios, or maybe do that as a 2 or 3 floor versus this could be even 4. Because you have this design component, you don't want to have a radical change in heights. All right, good. Look at that.
That's the one. Didn't scan very well.
Well, you got time to talk about it and point out the highlights.
Alright, so
Remember, the exercise here is, it doesn't matter what you did. Be proud of what you did. Tell your team and your classmates, this is my process. This is what I thought. Like, I really liked the 2 or 3 guys who said, I looked at this report. I made a decision I would like to have this type of fuse on my side based on these alternative materials. Yeah? And then you can play with the design. So there's some percent more design component driven, some percent more data driven. So if that is a bad copy, enlighten us with your voice.
So all of these are going to be red, and there's a key, but it kind of is, you can't really see it. So these are all going to be retails. So all these red are going to be retail. I placed most of so retail, all of this on the outer skirts is retail because this is coming in from the highway. I added 2 intersections, so that way it would be easier to get into the retail store. Put a roundabout in the middle so it was easy since there were so many streets kind of meeting in the middle. And then I put office space in the back. And then my idea was that like the retail stores closer to the office would be geared towards like restaurants, restaurants and like office supply stores. And then the outside would be more just like regular shops for the residential around it. And then again, I placed the office space a little bit farther back. Just because it's easier to get in and out of the retail stores from the highway, come in, go to the retail, you don't have to drive all the way back into the site. But then if you're like going to the office to work all day, go into the back of the site where the office was.
Alright. Look at that. Sideways. Oh, sorry. Technically challenged with PowerPoints. That's your professor.
Alright, so I started using the existing streets that surround the site to kind of create a network through our site. So that's kind of driving some of the forms you see. And then I kind of looked at the residential to this would be the northeast. And I thought instead of looking inside, like having the retail face in towards the site, I wanted to look out and engage the street. Create somewhat of like a retail corridor here, or set the stage for a future retail corridor. So, and that actually doubles as a kind of buffer for the parking that's kind of mostly on the interior. There's some street parking along the outside of the site, but I wanted to keep most of the parking hidden. There's 5 main buildings. There's a kind of retail strip kind of tucked behind everything that has it's anchored by a electronics and appliance store, which from the MSRED report was in high demand in the area. And then there's some
because 2 miles up north, Secret City went out of business years ago. That's one of the examples.
So then there's a few other retail industries that are in, and I figured that they could fill the rest of that main strip. And then the idea for this area is kind of to be more geared towards the neighborhood. And like mom and pop shops, like I noticed I looked with this street here, there's a few mom and pop shops kind of sprinkled here and there intermittently with retail. And that's kind of the idea for here. to create, to kind of continue that atmosphere. And then down in the corner, there's a couple more retail strips. And then there's one freestanding that either I was thinking gas station in the corner or like a freestanding restaurant or something.
This one?
Yeah.
5. Alright,
That's it.
nice job. Alright, who's that? You say this like as it's the last thing you do today.
Alright, so as I was first looking at this, I did Google map it, and I envisioned kind of like what Miramar looked like. It was right off I-75 in my head, so I-71. So when you come off the highway for commuters, or even though this is residential, I wanted to have an office building. It could be big corporate companies, but some kind of office in the southwest corner. Also, I put a restaurant here for people who are in an office or people who want to live in the residence to go to dinner. I put like a Chili's here or something that would go in an out parcel. There's always a gas station near a highway, so I figured right here on the corner with access from Edmondson and was it Edwards? So I put a gas station here with 2 entrances. Retail at the bottom here, whether it could be like small, like salon, nail salon, or it could be what's that, barber shop, or something like a small Italian restaurant like we have on 17th Street called Giorgio's. I pictured that small retail. I did a large grocer, even though there's a Whole Foods and a fresh market in the area. There's still always competition, so I envision maybe a Trader Joe's or Publix to expand in the new market. And last out part of
This is Kroger's territory.
yeah, okay, that's
So no Publix.
always look for expansion. I put one more small. And one last art parcel, I envision maybe a 7-Eleven or some kind of convenience store on the north side of it. Yeah, entrance and exit, both sides of it. That's it.
Alright. One or two more. One more. I picked, I like, got what I saw as submissions, that download, whatever came in that folder, put it in. Didn't really go through documents. If it was the last page of the document, I might have found it and was late. So I might not have everyone here.
Okay, so I did a solar power garden because there was already a lot of stuff going on in the community, so I made like an area for rest, but it's also productive and resourceful. So basically this would be the facility where people work and also serve as like an information center for the community to come in and learn about it. I put this like line of trees here, so the view for the residents here wouldn't be so gruesome to just be looking at solar panels, so it's kind of more subtle. These are gazebos and benches for, you know, lunch break, or also the people who come to relax. There's solar panels on top of the gazebos. There's a gazebo up there. Here's the parking, and there's more parking over here, and there's an entryway through here, and this is an entryway as well, and that's it.
Alright. Why solar panels?
I've seen this project. I did a project on this before. A university made a solar power, like whole field,
Okay.
that powers a part of the college. So I've seen the medium household income.
Where did they do that?
There was somewhere.
Like where in the region or in the city did they do? Did they do that at a rather lower valued area, or did they do that on top of the buildings?
It was like a field. I think
Alright.
they did it at Kentucky University.
Okay.
A lot
Right
of
in downtown?
Was it downtown?
Oh, did they do that in right downtown?
I wasn't really familiar.
So I like the charm of picking something out of non-traditional, out of the box. Just like you mentioned with your flower petals and water drops, as in we don't really get that kind of conceptual happiness to get done. In your case, you need to tell us how did you end up with solar panels, and why would you be able to make this happening at one of the most prime real estate locations with that kind of transit points? And I'm not meaning this as in negative. I'm like, intrigue us.
Well, in my mind, since there's so much residents and businesses, I don't know if it would be like a city thing to determine who could use the power that's being produced from it, whether they offer it to the residents
That
or
would
to the
be Duke
business.
Energy in that case, yeah?
Yeah, so that was my whole thing. To to me, I would give it to the residents, but I don't know how that goes. But that was my prime reason for doing it, and I'm also a big park person and having places for people to come gather. So that's what this was. So it's like, it has a use, but it's also not like, you know, if you see a whole bunch of solar panels, you're kind of like, am I supposed to go in there? But it's kind of like mixed for learning and relaxing.
All right, good. All right.
It's really very, it's straight up.
Talk about it.
All right, it's just
Explain why this is computer rendered, not hand-driven, as a creative exercise, as demonstrated multiple times.
All right,
Please.
because in my industry, when you say sketch, this is a sketch. So, this is to scale. I foresaw, because there was a hospital complex and it was off the interstate and it's just north of Cincinnati, I foresaw like a slightly above market rate townhouse subdivision. And then I also wanted to put a grocery store there just so the residents could have a community serving amenity right nearby. I would have all this fenced in. And I put extra parking there just because I would foresee the out parcel getting developed, you know, later down the road. And yeah, so the commuters, because it's close to the interstate, they can have nicer homes. I saw like in aerials that it was mostly kind of decrepit single-family homes that are really old, so I really wanted to put like a nicer townhouse subdivision there, and so that's my category, sketch.
You're welcome.
Oh, I said thank you.
So what I want to do is I want to go there and give you the quick rundown on how this looks right now. So we're here in the city of Norwood. You can see now here is the 71 coming. You can see that. So it's to satellite. And then you scroll in and you can see this. This is the kind of layout nowadays. Yeah. So you see there's a courtyard for Marriott. There's some outlier parcels, parking interior with open access as well.
What's next to the Marriott? East of it.
Interstate?
No, east.
East?
Right there, you're on it. What is that?
Don't know. Looks like another hotel.
I couldn't tell you though.
You look here at Street View. Yeah, that looks like
office.
No, it's a hotel.
So you go in and get this perception of that space right now. Different angles, different uses, restaurant on the ground. Again, a lot of impervious area of parking. So if you go back here.
Is that ground level retail?
Yep. So Taste of Belgium is actually a Belgian waffle shop. Edge in Tavern is the existing residentials here. And I think here they actually put an electronics company in place, not necessarily a retailer. Yeah. But the interesting thing is if you look at this concept here, the building pattern, all of that town, all the new apartment buildings, all the new apartment buildings next to particular university housing is this kind of facade and setup. The interesting thing again here is I think how close you guys came in with like major materials and setups, yeah, and the separation of uses. They did this large multi-use building here as an anchor, and particularly interesting also if you look here at the street view, when you actually come the on-ramp, how this looks actually from the interstate going in. And now this is the underpassage, and that is you now can see that drop from interstate actually to level of the to the building. And you can see here in the back, the multi-use is actually a covered garage as well, and how they face that out. All right? That's so far about this project. So we're going to give me like a 5-minute break, stretch your legs, then we're doing lecture part, and shift later from lecture into teamwork. That stuff. Your boss is in checking something. I want those originals and write-ups, yeah? Did you submit the words?
Yeah, I submitted everything.
If you submit the words are fine. But let's say if you have the originals, I take the originals. I had a student years ago, and I have to see if I find it fun. She did this by layers. She even had, like, I think, infrastructure on a different question paper. Give me all the bodies.
Technically, it's not that original.
Yeah, that's fine. Why not? The important part, for me, the important part is that you actually do this work by hand. So, I think it's through, that's the reason why I said it's not, doesn't have to be completely to scale, so you don't rubber edge everything out. So, you got others. Yours was back and, yeah, yours was back and white.
Right?
It's more about, it was rich in contrast, it's more about the ones who do color work. So, and you could just, if you attached it, that you had done this online. See, it works much better in person. All right. My original. Yeah, we'll take a look at it tomorrow if the contrast is not good enough. It's more about, okay, fine, this is detail really there, part of the write-up. So, what? Tuesday.
Okay.
Not, oh, drop it on my, oh, he's here on Monday, but I probably won't. Did I give you my book?
Yes, I'll get it.
All right,
back.
that's where you've been. Okay. All right, so what I want to do is I want to go into the housing discussion a little bit with some sketches where you're like, oh, it does, like simple sketches, but each of those forms has certain issues and certain types attached to it. This is rather an opening discussion for following the patterns in the books, where we talk about single-family homes and picket fence and all that. But I think it's important if you just went through this exercise of site plan, that what type of uses you're going or functions you're going to put on there have certain implications. Yeah? So if you look at the architecture and the social issues, we have each of those types and have a certain form attached, and then also create social issues and social impacts. Yeah? From the stereotype ideal of the American dream, the picket fence, the not in my backyard idea, as in Home Sweet Home, creating that little personal place for the family. Yeah? And yes, I think also we can argue that we did subsidize or bubble blown, bubble overloaded that kind of tree. Alright, so if we talk about the single family home, there are certain spaces that are given us for recreational or safeguard functions. Yeah? Front yard versus backyard. Yeah? Depends on the geographic region and the climate region. You probably have more or less. Depending on your income levels and your affordability, you probably have more or less. Yeah? This example here gives you more, less front yard, but more backyard. The idea of that would be concept of privacy. Yeah? If this is properly fenced, you might even have a 5 or 6 foot fence around it, so you really can do your thing. Or you live in a community with like an open backyard character, where all the homes next to each other have pretty much no real fence in between, or maybe just a small one that gives you kind of the fenced in idea, but not yet the physical structure. Yeah? The next step would be the idea of a two-family home or duplex. To be honest, this angle looks the same difference, but you can see this is based on has two entrances right next to each other, but it looks as one in the back light here right now. The duplex goes even further. We have triplexes and quads. Yeah? Depending on where you are actually in what kind of region you're developing, the quads have been very popular, let's say in the lower area of Delaware. Because it gives you a certain amount of housing, a certain amount of shared place, but not apartment style living. Yeah? And made certainly some interesting arguments in terms of financing and in returns. Yeah? I think we could see more and more duplexes coming here when it comes to infill redevelopment. First of all, we need a market crash for that. So I can buy land a little bit cheaper. And secondly, would actually, I'm leaning out of the window here, talking about 5 to 10 years probably. You also need an area where it's okay to say we're taking the single family homes down and putting more density on it, but we don't want to have apartment complexes. We rather have that single family home style still, but single families might not allow anymore in terms of income affordability to have that big house. They rather downsize and rather have maybe shared premises, one big backyard. We have in the condo style, apartment style, we have co-living. A 1, 2 people, 3 people family could go this route. You think about it, affordability in your own personal lives right now, and look at your friends and or parents in different age groups. It was just recently on the radio here, more blah blah comment, but it was recently on the radio again here that we are the least affordable state nowadays in terms of cost of living and lifestyle. It's easy to afford downtown Fort Lauderdale if you make the money for that, but you probably not if you look at median household incomes and where the trends in living are going. So take outside of the Miami area, if you look at Broward County itself, I think Broward County will develop in a different way in terms of residential development. More dense, more rental apartments for sure, but if it comes to not yet the complete single family home unit, is there something in between? Hybrid. The duplex could be a hybrid version. For you as young developers, could be also like, hey, I'm building one and living in the other one. One half of the building pays for the other one. Not 100% sure if this is going to be the case in this county because we have that South Florida condominium style, apartment building style part, and you have to deal with all the landscaping and maintenance in that type of property. So one thing we really like to do here is we're going to pay our homeowner association a landscaping company. Why would I have to cut my grass in 90 degrees outside if I can hire a landscaping company for that? Or even like this in terms of the front yard, let's reduce the footprint of the building at all and say, you know what, we put a second unit in the back-to-back. Then you get into what we have here already as the townhomes co-ops. You've seen those, where they're like a 4-unit, 2 floors, 2 units on the first floor, second, and then like a condominium townhome mixture. That would be probably the Florida duplex itself. And Lynch talks about the row house or townhouse, the flat. So you now get a figure about, this is the UK talk instead of the apartment, or walk-up apartments. And there's a short notice about elevators and condominiums. Similar sketch setups. Again, small illustration in terms of what's actually positive or negative. So what are the advantages or disadvantages if I increase my density and if I go in with the idea of, let's say, townhomes? Noise could be an issue, could be the height, how you overbuild the building, could be the size them, how to size them up. The gardening, familiar activities, if this is all fenced area here in the back, parcels, interaction space for your own place, turns into a smaller construct, And then the question is, to which extent is this going to be more and more neighborhoodly, or neighborhoodliness, friendliness? Neighborly. Here is really interesting talk about neighborly. Like, know your neighbors, talk to them, be part of a social construct we used to call a neighborhood. And you have that in a different context here. Disadvantages noted, land cost. You could argue this only works if you actually built this on cheaper lands, or cheaper available land. There's certainly a low density, and my argument here is, or the question to you guys, is this actually socially or economically inclusive? As in, if I go and build out a lot of townhomes, am I going to be socially or even economically inclusive at some point? Huh? Any comments on that?
In what way does that, I mean, it makes the area develop, and it's bringing in tax revenue, is also stimulating the worker force, so.
Yeah.
In what way, exactly?
Well, again, that depends. You made a very good start on that. Depends where you build it, how you build it, yeah, and what are you putting in those buildings? As in, are those townhomes you're aiming for the 200 range? Are those homes like the 300 or 400 range or other? Yeah? We have a board member who's specialized in boutique niche townhomes. The reason why I say boutique and niche is because he starts, depending on which development he's doing, he starts with 400 flat. Not including yet the kitchen upgrades or the elevator shaft you can put into the 3-floor townhome. Huh? So if you look at Pembroke Pines, Harry Posen and his company, beautiful products, a fantastic work. Huh? He pretty much opens up a new project and people are in line waiting to sign so they get into those developments. Fantastic niche. Huh? This is his little thing. He is really down to the point of that and very intense with the personal contact and the communications with the customers. You know, we had a few opportunities to visit all those sites, like Pembroke Pines, Chapel Grove is the current one. Yeah? They are not cheap. They're serious business. Yeah? He sells townhomes in a high-density pocket community in Pembroke Pines with first-grade school and transit connections or transportation connections, as much as you would pay for a small single-family home a few miles up the road in Plantation. Different community, different school district, different religious groups in the neighborhood. Yeah? But he has this down to the comma point. Huh? When he comes into class and presents, he literally pulls out an old Excel spreadsheet and says, this is my recipe. Huh? No fancy software, he's doing this in a perfect way. Huh? But again, townhome for 200 or 450. There's at some point where you have to ask, in the larger landscape economically, are you starting to see what we see in small neighborhoods with gentrification when we renew them? Do you see a certain trend where economic changes in neighborhoods will take place? Can you just afford, how to say it? If the main purpose at the end of the day is just making enough money to actually maintain the mortgage, and you cut back everything else in quality of life, you know, just to make that payment for the house versus renting somewhere else or buying a home somewhere else, but have different commuter and different other costs involved. Yeah? That's a whole pile of literature you can tap into from finance, from planning, regional development, economic development, and from the social perspectives. Yeah? And you can see that as examples. There are certain areas in the greater Fort Lauderdale area where homes are really, really low in price, where everyone who knows a little bit about a neighborhood would say that is part of distressed neighborhoods and distressed price. This is where you want to buy, yeah? And then flip it. Versus Las Olas, not so, can't compare, that's a prime real estate. Yeah? And again, different density for sure, different cost element. Yeah? But moving away from the pure single-family home, but not yet there in the condominium tower. Would love to see more of that, because they still have kind of a sense of community if done right with the site plan. You know? Because there are some exchange transition zones for interaction in that community. More than just waving your neighbor by when you leave out of the garage, click on the garage, close it, and you're gone. I have a neighbor on the corner. I have never seen that person outside of the car. Never. And in terms of timing, we apparently missed each other at the mailbox. Yeah? Well, the only interaction I have is when she tries to run me over. So, and I go to the mailbox. So, and the interesting concept on here is, are we socially inclusive, exclusive at some point when it comes to rent levels? And the Supreme Court, if you look at planning law, the Supreme Court had actually a few cases in front of them, a little bit dated when it comes to ordinances zoning out certain sizes of land uses, the cases of Mount Laurel as an example, yeah? Where you pretty much said, this is the lot size, this is the size of the building, square footage of the residential use. And then you're like, not really everyone in that town can actually afford that. So, but the regional trend was to give that the space, and that's back in 1979, they get sued for that in front of the Supreme Court, because they literally started exclusionary zoning. The most common thing we know about exclusionary zoning is the extreme case of sex offenders, where you say, I can draft an ordinance where a registered sex offender has to be a certain distance away from public schools and other institutions. Yeah? When in 2005, 2006, 2005, that whole discussion came across the board in the US. The city of Miami was actually in the headlines because they had proposed certain zoning restrictions that would not allow anyone within city limits to actually relocate. Like, it's an interesting concept. If you live in the city limits, the ordinance comes to place, that's fine. But if you start moving, ordinance kicks in and would not allow you to actually stay in residence. And it would have to go into the legal text to make more interpretation, but that was about 10, 15, almost 15 years ago, that discussion. My boss back then said, okay, fine, I need all public institutions in our city limits do a buffer around the city properties. 2,000 feet or whatever it was back then. And basically saying, okay, fine, where these boundaries are, that's where the signpost comes in and says here, warning, school district, school area. So, perfect example for how to apply GIS. School building, do a buffer around it. All right, so the idea is again here to move this forward. We talked about a little bit about the duplex, and the question in here is, if you read the housing chapter, yes, it's 1962 when he wrote this, but you actually have to ask then the whole duplex, the single family homes, and his ideas of how apartments will look like. Can you ask the question, has Lynch a wrong understanding of these types of housing? And I will go with the same way I argued for Kenny, as in, well, that depends. Yeah? And it depends certainly on the regional context and where you would like to apply that question. In a rural area where density and land availability is not really a problem, I would say he's wrong. Because that's gonna be single family homes, and if the density goes higher, let's say with a smaller town next to it, it's gonna be rental apartments, but not a duplex, because there's a trade-off with the duplex. It's not going to be the condominium tower, because nobody, I think, wants to have a condominium tower in the middle of Montana. Would be an interesting concept. Great wide, big open. What was it? Big open, big wide open. Montana sky. And all that. But again, I try to polarize here a little bit to push you guys outside of the Florida perspective here. Particularly the young man in the last row from New York is having fun. So, what's the common type in your?
Kind of touching on something. I was watching a year or so ago a TED Talk, a guy talking about walkable cities and the issue with sprawl. Then I read this book, and I saw that he wrote this back in 1962. They had an issue with sprawl back then. What can we kind of do with that in all this time? If sprawling is an issue.
Sprawl is still an issue. So the definition of sprawl is kind of a leapfrog development, yeah? To get that exposure because it's part of housing and how we actually perceive regional context. Yeah? So, if you say it's leapfrog development, because the availability of land farther out is cost is cheaper, in a stereotype rate, cost is cheaper, but the distance you have to overcome somehow. Yeah? If transportation is beautifully available, transportation cost is very low. When I came to the US, a gallon was $1.70. Yeah? Compared to like a $4 or $5 gallon. In a contrast, if you look at it. If you live an hour away drive time, you might be, depending on where you live, you might be able to afford more livable space in that community and different amenities than right next to your road. Yeah? But you have to overcome the additional costs for your transportation. Makes sense. Yeah? So if your commuting costs of, let's say, $50 a month go up into $300 or $400 a month because of gasoline prices, or your car breaks down, you have other costs involved for the car, some folks do not add that up into their monthly payment in the cash flow. We're in real estate guys, we can argue cash flow. Yeah? So after all of that, even then you can argue, well, if I'm this zip code versus this zip code, what's my insurance for the car? And after all of that, we can take a look at it if that leapfrog development is actually more cost effective for your own personal wallet. Yeah? Some people do not think like that. If your whole transportation costs dirt cheap, that equation would always go for, I want to have a bigger house for a cheaper price somewhere else. And I'm okay with the commute. Particularly here. I don't know about the Miami prices right now, but let's say 1,000 square foot condominium in Miami rental, 1,800, 2,000, 2,000, 1,800?
No, a little less, yeah.
1,800 depending where in the Miami area. You rent homes and houses here in that area if you find a cheaper one in, let's say, Sunrise. But you have to be willing to travel that distance. Yeah? So, but then also if you work in Fort Lauderdale, why would I pay $1,800 for a condo in Miami unless I'm really, really on that Miami lifestyle in the condominium towers, versus find for the same price something in 10-minute distance from downtown core Fort Lauderdale. Same price, but my time in commute is more valuable than that. That's why I'm saying personally, I live in inland. I live closer to IKEA than to the beach. Yeah? Not necessarily cheaper, but I have a 5-mile commute. 30 minutes if I have green lights. Versus you probably hit campus for 45 minutes.
No, I get here in 28. I'm hauling ass. I'm always, yeah,
Speed
I'm
limit.
on the
Yeah.
express,
Right.
on the express lane.
But it's different. If rush hour is bad for me, if in the middle of school and rush hour in university, I'm hitting 40 minutes, particularly at 5 p.m. That's the reason why I'm always till 8 o'clock in the office. Rush hour. That was a different perspective. Yeah? Sprawl, to come back. In regional policies, sprawl has changed the idea how we deal with land consumption. The city of Portland made urban growth boundaries. They shut down the growth on the area and decided, okay, fine, we need to have a different market. We can't grow and grow and grow and annex in, annex in. They really said, let's stop this, and then you can make an argument they created an artificial land market. Yeah, where land prices are going up because there's no more supply, only reuse. Yeah, state of Delaware, state of Maryland has been really strong in the early 2000s in terms of land consumption, more on the sustainable development concept and trying to deal with this kind of sprawling elements. My neighbor in Dover, Delaware commuted 19 minutes one way. That's a piece of cake in the Miami area, but in Delaware. Yeah, he was a correctional officer in New Jersey. He commuted out of state to work there. They personally made the decision, sometimes it's just personal stories, but they made the personal decision, she works in town, he commutes because of his work schedule.
Yeah, that's typical up there though.
But because they do a 12 or 15-hour shift set schedule. Yeah?
I noticed in Miami, we're building up. Also, that's what they said in the commissioners meeting, we're going to start building up to alleviate some of this sprawling. And that's all that we're doing around the county is building up. Any little development they can get is going up, apart from subdivision.
Yeah, because if you just look over the thumb, additional floor or two on the same footprint is more cost effective than actually a second building in the same height next door. With the current land prices, it's going to be all for density, density, density. And more on that, unless it's really written in the zoning ordinance and really being as a fight in terms of commissioner and city commission's work, more and more green space is going to be condensed, as in built to the lot line, get everything maximum out. So that's where the environmental ruling comes in place and say, okay, fine, now what is water retention? Yeah? How do you do with water drainage and retention on the property? Yeah? You're doing enough office open space for drainage. Yeah? There's a whole barrage of zoning codes of overlay zones. Yeah? Where in certain states they say, hey, if you live in this county, you have to have a certain ratio of pervious versus impervious area. And that includes parking lots, so they can't build that. And the developer says, well, what if I build less parking lots and give more green space? And then there comes the parking regulation in place and saying, oh no, for X amount of square foot of retail or restaurant, you need X amount of parking spaces. So that's where the extreme case of the so-called planned unit development district comes in, where you say I'm big enough as a development to create my own zoning code. Dana Point, next week, they are their own little zoning district. So they actually shift things around and can deal with all these kind of different rules and settings. Sprawl is not a solved problem yet. The moment land is cheap and available again, we will have more and more sprawl. Unless you have the planning world and the politicians world to say we need to have more protection, let's say for land uses and resources. And then you look at states like Nevada or Utah where, oh, let's put 5,000 dwelling units in one large development. Like Old Farm, residential neighborhood. And they're selling out. There's a huge demand for those, for prime dollars. But I don't want to get into that too much because I would actually have to now go back now and say, okay, an example from Utah 5 years ago, what's the current pricing, what's the current trend? I encourage you guys, if you haven't done that yet, there's a webpage, planetizen.com. It's like a planning webpage with trends and stories on it. Check out the American Planning Association's webpage. American Planning Association webpage. Besides the typical real estate companies and real estate organizations, they are sometimes a little bit on the, there's a huge discussion on social justice and how we actually transform spaces. But there's also an interesting discussion in terms of the land values and land developments and redevelopment. I have a few slides on urban renewal, current and an old story, like the sins we did in the past, as in let's bulldoze down a whole neighborhood and then rehab it in a different way. Yeah. So, does this answer your idea about sprawl? Yeah. Fun fact, to finish this. If you go in and take a look at old maps from South Florida, early 70s. Take a look at where the grasslands and the wetlands are. Take a look at every 60, 70, 80, 90, 2000. We can actually see how the space has evolved over time. Sometimes jump because of transportation modes. Interesting story to see just in pictures. All right. Where we at? I think I pretty much was the sketches. So to finish this kind of idea about spaces, places, and the idea of how he perceives the physical structures of housing, you got to keep in mind that when we create places, what are places? All right, we got that. we also create buildings and uses with them. Yeah? That said, we got to consider what we're doing for pedestrian footpaths, parking, the sitting areas. There's actually a resting area or amenities. Yeah? Depending on the geographic region, it might be a pool house, maybe it's a little park. Yeah? If you're doing apartment buildings, ever thought about the laundry machine?
Yeah.
It's going to be a in the unit, or is it actually a shared laundromat room inside the building? Or are you just having a bunch of apartment buildings and you walk around the corner to the laundromat at the next retail strip or mall?
Depends on the development that you're doing.
Depends on the development, exactly. Yeah, it goes with laundry, goes with waste and storage. Yeah, and goes with amenities like playground, fun, and recreation. Depending on which area you live in, depending on the regional culture, let's say on cycling, you might want to consider a certain amount of bike racks or even a bike barn, like actually a bike locker for your residents. Yeah? Today's world, we've seen changes in architecture and design for Uber. Airports have adapted to Uber space. Yeah? In signage and in designated areas. Yeah? I would not be surprised. Actually, do have a picture of that. Not here in the slide. I haven't seen it yet here in Fort Lauderdale. Haven't been in downtown since July, August. But I saw it in San Diego during a conference. They actually have dedicated parking spots now for the scooters, for those rental electric scooters. So they're not piled up on the sidewalk. Yeah? So I literally took a parking bay from the regular car parking, marked it up with a different code, and made a scooter sign on it. And you see like 6 or 7 scooters parked there, in those designated zones. So that's how space and how the cities adapt to different uses. Did I show you guys Heidelberg walking distance, walkability? Not sure if it's today. I can present this next week if needed. I have a few slides from Europe where you suddenly see a smart car. If this is the parking spot, smart car is not parked like this, it's parked like this. Because it's as long as a regular car would be right. So you can put 2 smart cars right next to each other. Story goes that the city of Berlin, when smart cars came to the market, they changed their parking meter policies and put different parking meters in place. As in, yes, you can park 2 smart cars here, but you have 2 parking meters, so you have to pay to make sure that they get the parking revenue. Alright, so when we also talk about how we would arrange the buildings in the right way, you did this with your exercise. Figured out how I'm going to put elements in place. There was an argument with cover the main parking court from the main street. Some of you put larger buildings on the side of the interstate, or depending on traffic or interaction on the site. So that's another interesting thing, how I arrange them, let's say if I'm right next to 595. Do I arrange them the short side or the long side? More exposure to my residents with the windows and balconies, but if the alignment on the side is better for me because it shields the noise, depends on the site. Again, we had this discussion on your tables, tall versus low buildings. Turns into the discussion on lunch and a general idea on site plans when you arrange things on your plans and your drafts. Shade. Which building is dropping shade on the other one if you have certain building heights? If you have certain privacy. Are you going to butt buildings back to each other like this and have people with bathroom windows right next to each other? Or kitchen versus bathroom window? Literally, his distance to me. Don't need to see that. Don't want to see that. The same idea is, how do you arrange your buildings when it comes to the amenity of a view on your site? Beach versus Everglades. Would be interesting to see on the, what's it called, the Metropolitan, the two towers, the new towers are coming up on the Sawgrass Mills. What's the name for it? Not Metro.
Metropolis?
Something with Metropolis, something like that. Would be interesting how they structure the idea of which direction you facing, north, south, east, west, and if those units are the same price. Most common example you have in hotels. Metropolitan, yeah. Most common examples you have in hotels. Are you going to have a city view or you have an ocean view? Can be multiple hundreds of dollars for the same type of room just because your balcony is facing somewhere differently. Huh? We haven't discussed this about, hey, no, who was that in the site plan? Someone said, okay, facing each other. There was a retail corridor, one component was like a residential corridor, but how the users are facing each other. Well, again, it's part of the thought process when you do the site. What are the special structures you're going to have to consider? Huh? Or in this case, actually lynch nodes. If I look at the site, one of the special structures easily to oversee is utilities. Where is that utility transformer switch box going on from for the power and electric, power line? Huh? They don't argue with you. They say we want that corner. And you get this nice, really big green block. And it takes weeks until they show up and finally connect it. Huh? So the idea here is also like recreational facilities, schools, elementary schools, kindergarten. Huh? That's more a regional context. But the question is, how do you deliver as a developer? If you're thinking multifamily, are you planning on a playground or not? Or are you saying, no, they can play in the school next door? Small little decisions that are actually at the end is for you for costs. Special structures here listed as well, pools, golf courses, large parks, and then more than public use we've seen so far, libraries, police station, community centers, churches. Who's building churches today?
Who's building churches?
Building churches. Ever thought about a church in your planned community? Any examples in mind?
Yeah. There's a church that went up in my community like 3 years ago. It's a gigantic church. La Virgen de Guadalupe. It's a white church.
Okay. Is that like what we would consider like a mega church where 5,000 people are driving in for Sunday morning?
Not 5,000, but like maybe at least 1,500.
Alright. So the context of churches have changed over time. Talking about sprawl. If you drive 3 hours on a Sunday morning to your church, that's different. That's an interesting concept. If you look at states like Montana, Utah in particular, and Idaho, Nevada, how the Mormon church is responsible for, or impacting, not necessarily responsible for, but impacting land prices and certain stability in land prices. If there is an announcement that there will be a new temple planned in that community, because they're kind of literally thinking about maximum size of temples and serving capacity, land prices in that area go up and are very stable.
Wherever there's a church?
With LES and the Mormon Church. Because of that very intense community involvement they have with the members of their church. Because it's like a special little community within the regular residential communities. Interesting observation if you look at regional little impacts, how they actually build on that. Yes, please.
There's a lot more to that. They own a lot of real estate besides just churches, though.
Besides that, yes.
There's a lot more to that.
The common phenomenon, if you look at if there's an existing community and there's an announcement that a specific church would like to or wants to actually apply for a building permit to actually create a temple, there is actually the side effects of that. And I think it's a positive because they're actually setting this up in a nice way, in a stable, community-driven way. So less fluctuation because of trends up and down, but it's more consistent. Observation from living in Idaho. All right. We did talk a little bit about noise. Did talk a little bit about privacy. Density we touched a little bit. I think density is a key to future developments as we can develop them. Let's open up this discussion. If we look at current developments, this is a very open question. If you read that book, you're looking at different developments and phenomena and trends across the country. I wrote down here as one of the final thoughts, do we create places with stigma? Do we create places with stigma? On purpose or by accident? When we keep going with certain development types, we added here socially excluded housing or versus inclusive housing. Is there a certain level of segregation initiated by real estate development because we are in a region and we're looking at certain returns? Yeah? The huge discussion we have in Broward County is about affordable housing. Yeah? And then you look at the returns and you're like, yeah, well, affordable housing, but I can make more money in the other product. It's like, it's nice for the community, but I can make more money in the other product. Yeah? Where's that trade-off? We had a few folks in the past and really raised that alarming situation and said, we gotta do more. Yeah? There's a radio commercial about a bank in terms of affordable housing. It's a local regional market director talking about it. But the interesting trigger, and I have to double check the numbers there. They're saying we had this amount of money for affordable housing. We talk about Broward County, but this amount of affordable housing invested nationwide. And that's nationwide is what I would like to see. As in, you're saying you're dropping like $4 billion in affordable housing nationwide, but what's the share for Broward County? Because the statement is $4 billion nationwide. As a US company or US bank, sure, I can make those commitments, I can make those loans, I can make those investments, but it's nationwide. So that by definition, the way this is done, I can drop $100,000 investment in Broward County and put more than $3.8 billion in the other states. Still, no false statement. $4 billion nationwide. But what's the impact here? So again, would like to go in and then say, okay, fine, what are your numbers by state or in by county? Because that ad is made about affordable housing availability or affordable housing supported by that company with a X billion dollar nationwide number. And I was like, okay, fine. That is where you start critical thinking about numbers. But do we create places for stigma?
Yeah.
Yes, such as?
Gentrification.
Gentrification, okay. Anyone in the clear about gentrification? What is gentrification?
Creating tax revenue in a particular area.
Oh yeah? No.
When you price people out of the specific areas because of the growing prices.
Okay, I could go with that. So very simplified is think about a distressed neighborhood undergoing through renovations and remodeling, and your rent levels and your housing prices go up, and suddenly those who live there, the former residents of that neighborhood, cannot afford to live there anymore. And that's one of the processes we consider gentrification. There are facets and multiple shades of gentrification, and And the reason why I say that is because the typical population that get outpriced or gentrified is African American poor. In the past 15 to 20 years, when we look at the inner urban cores, that is a typical population. I have a little bit of material for that as well, dated material about Philadelphia, but it gives you the idea of what's going on. Yes, please.
There's an area in South Miami, in South Florida, it's called Wynwood area, right? And there's a lot of bars there, a lot of art district, and surrounding the area is a terrible neighborhood.
Well, Wynwood itself was terrible.
Exactly, but
but
people got tired of having to go over there and not being able to be there after a certain time because the crime level was just, you don't want to be there after 3 o'clock in the morning because it's just, you're going to get shot, you're going to get robbed, you're going to get raped, or whatever. It's a terrible neighborhood. So people are complaining because they're gentrifying the area, but it's almost a good thing because it's getting rid of crime. And it's, yeah, you're raising the prices, you're moving people out of the neighborhood, but you're also getting rid of crime.
But again, in the case of Wynwood, there was, Wynwood is known, yeah, well, again, this is, in the case of Wynwood, you had that crime, Wynwood was kind of a warehouse sector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
And then the reuse of warehousing changed a lot of things with the galleries and places to come in. Now it's one of the hip destinations. Yeah. But good observation, if you cross the street, you're still having certain perceptions and realities.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know crime numbers, I don't know the housing prices there, I don't know any ethnic population distress there, so I can't really comment on that. Yeah, but it opens the door as in, hey, have you ever thought about this problem? Or these opportunities, one way or the other. Yeah? Segregation is clearly an issue that has been demonstrated in the past, also with public outreach in different disciplines, planning, social justice movements, etc. Yeah? Hasn't been really a thing in real estate, or was it?
Inclusionary zoning, I-21 is really what started the reward issue.
Yeah.
Because essentially pushed out of local housing.
So again, zoning is the thriving sector on this one. Yeah? How a decision is made by the local community through their comprehensive plan, through their policing powers. Zoning actually trickles down from a constitutional principle, the 14th and the 5th Amendment. How you actually describe your future livability of that community. It's written in your comprehensive plan, therefore the vision for 15 to 20 years. Of course, we all want to be in vibrant and livable neighborhoods, or cities and centers for lifestyle, live, play, and work. Yeah? But the question is, how do you address every social, economic aspect of your existing community and potential changes? Yeah? In health research, the SES, social economic status, will tell you even more about that. There's a saying, tell me your zip code and I can tell you your diseases and your economic status. Because depending where you live, you have certain income, you have certain lifestyle, you have certain risk levels, you have certain stress levels. I think I made that example here. There's a difference between walking down the street, saying hello to everyone, and you walk up into your house, versus you stop at every corner and you look over your shoulder if someone is going to knock you, and you walk up the apartment in the 4th floor and you have 3 quick deadbolts on the apartment door, just to make sure that not even within the apartment building, someone could come and enter your house or the little unit you have. That gives you a different level of stress. And some people like that or not. And it actually adds to your health in the long run. SES, when you look at public health discussions, huge factor when it comes to the mix over between public health and actually planning. So I want to close this with a question then. Another question. Is our performer socially inclusive? Because for most of the classes you're going to have in this program, we're going to crunch the numbers. Yeah? net operating income, expenses, cap rates. Is your performer socially inclusive? Well, that depends. It depends what you're putting on your site plan as amenities or structures. And if you actually then say, you know what, I accept a lower rate of return because I try to increase certain lifestyle or certain levels of livability with the cost associated. As in affordable housing in an extreme case. Can I actually put this in and offset the rent loss on one side with other elements? If you have enough space available. There's certainly examples where you say, well, you got to put some multifamily homes in there. You just can't build this whole site as single family. What you do as a mean developer, you put the apartments on the street side with the retail complex. You have a little tiny street going to the backyard of your large subdivision, and you have those exclusive large single family homes in the end. Visually shielded, even maybe a second road coming in. But you fulfill the state's policy, depending on the state, of a certain amount of rental apartments or smaller units versus just single family. Let's see what else do we have. Let's go through this very shortly. It takes about 15 to 20, then we take a break, and then we take a look at team stuff. Okay? This fits in the flow right now, even though you guys are almost falling into the 3 p.m. block. Alright. What is urban renewal? To push like the button a little bit about, let's move away from blank green development into other elements.
Isn't that reusing something that was already there, to either remodeling it or repurposing it?
Reuse, remodel, yeah. Rehab, maybe. What does this mean for site planning for us?
Correcting the damage that was done, so if there was no green space, adding green space?
Could be, if you want to do that, yeah. What else?
Infill.
Infill. It really doesn't matter for site planning. What it adds is how we integrate the new idea into the existing environment, and the structure that is existing on the site, we're going to demo that anyway. The only thing that adds to it is the demolition cost and the time lag to get rid of that. Like residents of Las Olas. I remember when they actually took down all of what has been on the site. As an example. It's just added cost.
It's different than adaptive reuse.
Adaptive reuse is different. Yes. Would you like to explain that?
Well, it's just using an existing structure and changing the use, essentially. For something like taking old industrial and turning it into lofts.
Yeah, but yeah, the really provocative argument here with urban renewal is that there are different ways of the structural changes. Yeah. So adaptive reuse, let's say, like your example is take manufacturing warehouses and move them, let's say, old rail yards, move them into like loft apartment buildings. That was a thing in the 90s. Right now, I'm not even sure if this is still really a really demanded trend in terms of lifestyle. Yeah?
Parking garages.
Pardon what?
Parking garages. They're being designed to be adaptive reuse.
Yeah. That, I think that's
a huge thing right now.
That's the new thing, that you actually say at least the first floor of the parking garage should have a minimum height that will be, later on can be used even for retail space. Yeah? And you get the building height in to actually put utilities and fire suppression systems for retail. Very interesting concept, as in you add today a little bit more money into construction costs to get the building height, with the impact that you have to redesign your parking spaces in the upper upper floors, because you also have to consider how you do the traffic flow inside a parking garage when you suddenly take off a floor or half a floor of the site. Yeah? All right, so what I'd like to show you guys, one is a very simple redo, then it takes a little bit longer, the remaking of Society Hill as an example, but there are different era or time frames. The message. Huh? Some of those pieces are just change a facade, change a plaster, a little bit a bucket of paint, as we kept saying. A bucket of paint. If you throw a few dollars of paint on your facade, it will change the character of the neighborhood. Why? Because some of the homeowners will see this and they might start doing it on the other side as well. Granted, it doesn't stop with a bucket of paint, but it might be a difference. If this building facade hasn't been painted in years, just doing an outline of the windows might change the appeal.
That's what I was gonna say, windows make a big difference, like modern windows.
Yeah. So part of the side-by-side elements here, finish this one. Yeah. You've seen a few pictures here, side by side, just the building and then all full sides. But the reason why I wanted to point this out is, yeah, they're good things, but there are also different things that you can say, here we go, technology. That's advertising.
The siding on your wall.
Or you can take a look at a little bit more dated, past, not antique elements here. And this is, I think, a great example here for Philadelphia. I mentioned about the sins we did in urban renewal. One of the sins Europe did is after World War II, certain areas of certain cities have been completely bombed out and destroyed. I invite you guys to look at pictures of 1946 in Berlin. Brickstones all over the place, and they've started to rebuild. In certain areas, rebuilding was using a different material, mostly concrete. We did have some ideas about concrete and brutalism. Yes, it's real. Yeah? As in, let's have a warehouse, a department store, 6 floors in concrete, next to 100, 200-year-old homes that are only 2 or 3 story high and completely different building materials. Yeah, and you have this really drastic contrast in architecture and design. Yeah? This one here is an example. On one side, it's praised for the urban renewal as a success, but also of creating a concept we later know or stereotype as the projects. Yeah? And a different impact because it was impacting actually African Americans as neighbors. Yeah? So this is about 6 minutes and then we take a break.
In 1950, Philadelphia's oldest neighborhoods were caught in a spiral of abandonment and decay. As residents flocked to the suburbs, the brick row houses and crowded marketplaces of the old city faded into the shadows of a disappearing past. But urban planners were reimagining cities, and these historic blocks would soon become laboratories for change.
Urban renewal was created by the federal government after the Second World War because there was a broad national consensus that our cities need help. Federal money coming from Washington managed locally. It became a tool that city planners could use to recreate whole sections of the city.
City streets would be the planner's canvas, the Philadelphia of the future, made possible through relocation, demolition, rehabilitation, eminent domain, and money. Development Director William Rapsky made urban renewal a cornerstone of the city's political reform movement, while Edmund Bacon, Director of the City Planning Commission, led the charge.
Philadelphia is a singular case where the city planning director became the face of the urban renewal movement. Bacon had a real gift for speaking to journalists, business people, understanding a different way to reach politicians and elected officials. He was a real salesman and marketer.
But Bacon's combative approach proved controversial.
Ed Bacon was theoretically aware of communities, but he said, don't ask the community to generate something because they just don't know. I know what ought to be.
Urban renewal was in some ways the first chapter in contemporary gentrification. The area becomes transformed. It becomes whiter, it becomes more affluent, it becomes more middle class. There were dynamic communities of black people, working class white folk who were, in short, pushed out.
In the heart of Philadelphia's historic district, the neighborhood of Society Hill had long been the working class backbone of the city's port. Named for William Penn's Free Society of Traders, it contained the city's main produce market, and it bustled with the families of African American and Irish laborers.
Society Hill was a deteriorated neighborhood. Broken containers, barrels full of fish and things like that were all over the place. We had the Blue Anchor Inn, which was frequented for the most part by foreign sailors, including some ladies that worked the area. This was not exactly a pretty place.
Bacon's office devised a plan to transform the old neighborhood.
It would have been very easy to have come in and torn it all down. What Bacon imagined, though, was a combination of the new and the old.
We had a plan for Dock Street, which we had to demolish. Those buildings were too far deteriorated, to build a high-rise apartment project to get the kind of density we thought we needed.
Bacon selected acclaimed modern architect I.M. Pei to design the centerpiece of the renewal, Society Hill Towers, which broke ground in 1963. Mayor Richardson Dilworth built a home for his family on nearby Washington Square, and Bacon designed a network of greenways, creating pedestrian pathways between streets.
The old Philadelphia Development Corporation marketed the idea of living in a restored colonial village to families that had an ancestry that dated back to the colonial period.
The first couple of buyers we had were Jared Ingersoll and his wife, who was a very famous Philadelphian, and Henry Watts, who was the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange.
I bought a house on 3rd Street. People who were young, like my husband and myself, we moved in because we could do a lot of the houses ourselves, and we built those houses. We rebuilt them. It was like a Vermont village. Everybody got together. Everybody knew everybody. And then, as it got more and more built up, it became more stratified.
South Street and Lombard Street, when I was real little, they were black neighborhoods. By the time I got to be a teenager, there was the first gentrification wave with Society Hill. The blacks who lived on Lombard Street were gone. Then it moved over to South Street, a kind of erasure. City policy programs did not consult with the very people that were being removed from their homes, everyday people feeling like they didn't have control or say over their lives, over where they lived, where they could send their kids to school.
Many are the sins of urban renewal, but Society Hill became the model all around the country for how to revive city neighborhoods, not through demolition, but through preservation.
In the space of 2 decades, Society Hill became one of Philadelphia's wealthiest neighborhoods. At the same time, Bacon's planning office guided urban renewal efforts throughout the city, creating Penn Center, Independence Mall, and Eastwick, projects that would transform Philadelphia's identity.
Okay, then if you look at this last one.
Sydney is Australia's great global city, with its breathtaking natural beauty and unparalleled harbour waterfront. Yet only 2 kilometres from Sydney's CBD, there's a unique opportunity for an exciting and visionary urban renewal. Urban Growth New South Wales will lead this transformational revitalisation, comprising Blackwattle Bay, home to the Sydney Fish Markets, Roselle Bay and Rail Yards, and the White Bay Power Station. The Bays will be an iconic destination that beckons the world. The White Bay Power Station is one of the city's most remarkable heritage buildings due to its raw industrial spaces and its role as an important landmark. The White Bay Power Station is in need of significant revitalisation and will act as a catalyst for urban renewal. The Bay's urban renewal team will lead the transformation of Blackwattle Bay into a vibrant marketplace catering for locals and tourists. We are now at the cusp of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for government, community, and the private sector to work together. The Bay's urban renewal will re-energise and revitalise Sydney for all Australians.
Alright, so it's urban renewal. It's a good thing, is it?
Yes.
This was completely sarcasm right now.
I think it is. I think it's completely good for everybody.
So I hope that little excursion into the little excursion into past times and different perspectives and different views, it kind of gives you the idea. There's more to real estate development than just a performer and crunching numbers. Particularly if you are really into the business of putting new elements into the ground. Yeah. Let's say the example of Steve and Noah, they started out with an 8-unit apartment building. But they crunched the numbers and they argued, okay, the neighborhood where they are in, right next to Funky Buddha Brewing Company, is gonna be changing and the city is promoting this change. Yeah? So you can argue, well, fine, I get more in rent right now. There is a trend to gentrification at a certain point, yeah. But they also broke ground recently for a larger apartment building complex in a different neighborhood, in different concepts, different frameworks. We'll see how that works. So yes, we can actually observe now the next few years our alumni, where they work and what kind of project they develop. Yeah? As in, is that actually making a change? I keep saying, well, you got to leave a legacy because every piece of concrete, every piece of brick you put into place has a certain lifetime. Yeah, even if you sell the project, or the product in 5 to 10 years or 30 years. Yeah, you got to leave a legacy. Looking at styles as an example. Yeah? What are they going? Are you? Is Roto as an example? Have you guys discussed what about in 40 years when we're going to take down this whole tower again? No. As long as this tower is in the way of standing there, we're going to have that tower there. Huh? Single-family homes. You might actually start taking down certain homes and increase density and rebuild certain elements. But a 2,000 or 3,000 square foot single-family home on an acre, it's going to stay there for some time. Yeah? So think about this. Urban renewal changes in spaces. Yeah? What you're doing, it's not necessarily always the performer that actually dictates or gives us the path. I don't want to say dictate, but leads us in a certain path. Yeah? With certain ideas, I hope all the classes in the program and the work you work outside can inspire that. All right, that said, let's take a break.
Wait, you want to figure out those two anything?
I don't know. Let's see if it's attached.
I thought somebody else was all they see theirs.
Because I'm pretty sure I saw yours stuck to it. See it, it's fun. Actually, September 23rd, I have 5 attached to it. Second, let's do this again. There wasn't done. Do you see it?
Also, I have access to RPS online, and I could copy the folder without opening it because I didn't want to modify the original.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Great. Do you see now? Because I have see attached files.
Thing. Let's move to one.
It had a submit button open. I can resend it if you want this. I sent the file to you.
I did?
I can.
Oh, check it.
Yeah, as I told you, it's the blue rectangles and the count. That's sheet here.
Yes, it's files, first two. Submission rubric, files, comments. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, that was hung up in the system. Sorry about that. Might be better here to write this sheet. Not just
I did put blue rectangles in
So this is okay. We had this issue. Look at
I was the first one who called it a square.
Yeah, so look at here, look in here. So this is how I look at this. I go like this. So search for that. Good. So now, okay. This is like, oh, that looks great. And click on it. And then just an orange.
You go back and show the square.
Yeah, that's because it takes a temporary thing, and I think it's because of this. So, because it didn't save it. Because right now.
The previous shows it, right?
Yeah, that's the weird part. So if you would go in and say, if I may do this, people want some more sheet. Even here it says active. So now if you change this here, click OK, then click this OK. Go down here and down. Double check it because you geocoded it, you save that as a layer. Yeah, so now, if you save the file, so if I go to all this, so if I go to this, so now I can see that because it's sorted my last modification, that has changed. Yes. Now I should show up.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's do this next one. Let's do groups. We're gonna make sure that it's All right, you want to talk midterm right now, or you want to talk midterm after the teams?
Right now. Full banded off now.
All right. What are places? Present the definition and describe the important role in the site planning process.
Places have, what's it called?
Value, identity, and culture.
Culture, yeah. Culture.
Yeah. Let's skip this if I want to reuse that.
Culture.